You've been told that narcissists secretly hate themselves, right? That deep down, they're just broken little boys in grown-up bodies acting out because they feel unlovable. They don't. They like who they are. They hate being told no. And that's the part that most people just cannot wrap their heads around. We want to believe that cruelty comes from pain because if it does, then maybe we can fix it. But what if it doesn't? What if it comes from something so much simpler and a lot darker, like entitlement? My name is Lisa Sonni. I'm author of Narcissism Unmasked, and I'm a certified relationship coach. I have spent the last 6 years studying narcissism and abuse recovery, working alongside experts like Dr. Romani, Dr. George Simon, and Dr. Peter Salerno, just to name a few. But one thing about me is that I enjoy collaborating with the industry's best. Dr. Eleanor Greenberg, Dr. Nadine Macaluso, therapists Vanessa Reiser, Aisha Grevenberg, Manjeet Ruprai, Dr. Kristen Milstead, and Sandra L. Brown. And I take what we know clinically about narcissistic disorders and make it practical so that women can stop blaming themselves and see what's actually going on. The idea that narcissism is rooted in shame, it came from early psychology. Think Greenberg, the old psychoanalytic model. Those theories were built on the belief that all pathology starts with a wound. So if somebody acts superior or cruel, it's got to be to hide how small and fragile they really feel. And it was comforting. It meant that even the most abusive person could be healed if you just loved them enough. And that story stuck. And if I'm being honest, it pisses me off because the belief also cost women their lives. It sounded compassionate, right? It gave therapists a roadmap and it made survivors feel like there was a reason behind all this madness. But the more we studied narcissistic personalities, the less it held up. But let me be clear about this because this is where people push back the hardest. I'm going to say what you're thinking right now. When I say that it's not shame or insecurity, I am not offering some new theory. I'm clarifying what the research has always shown. Narcissism was never empirically proven to be rooted in shame or low self-esteem. That was interpretation. Clinicians projected that onto the data because it fit the framework that they're using at the time. And it made the disorder sound human, right? And therefore, fixable. The research has consistently shown narcissism to be characterized by grandiosity, low empathy, dominance, and entitlement, not insecurity. But because early psychology tried to explain every behavior through childhood wounds and emotional pain, the interpretation stuck, right? It became accepted as truth, even though it was never supported by evidence. Now, people sometimes tell me, well, I can find articles from 2024, 2025, and say that narcissists are driven by shame. And they're right. And those articles were written by therapists, and what do I know? I'm just a coach. I'm not actually trying to be self-deprecating, but let's talk about this. Those are opinion pieces. They're not studies. They're just repeating the same outdated model. The actual data, including decades of personality and behavioral research, points toward character structure, not inner suffering, okay? I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm going to give you a resource. Read The Nature and Nurture of Narcissism by Dr. Peter Salerno and read Character Disturbance and In Sheep's Clothing by Dr. George Simon. Check their sources, their bibliographies, and their footnotes. Follow the evidence for yourself. I'm not debating opinion here. I'm presenting facts. And I want to add something that Dr. Eleanor Greenberg, author of Borderline Narcissistic and Schizoid Adaptations, The Pursuit of Love, Admiration, and Safety, told me. Dr. Greenberg has over 50 years of experience working with narcissists, couples, and survivors and studying this field in depth. She said that clinicians who don't specialize in these disorders often simply won't know, simply because they haven't studied it, okay? They're trained to treat anxiety and depression and trauma, not character pathology. So it's actually understandable that they'd interpret narcissism through the only lens that they have. And I don't say that with criticism. Therapy culture was built on empathy and repair, and it is uncomfortable to accept that some disorders aren't treatable in the traditional sense. But refusing to update the framework doesn't make the old one true. People driven by shame feel distress. They feel guilt. They feel fear of rejection. Narcissists don't. They feel anger when their power is threatened, not shame when they've caused harm. They don't lie awake at night wondering if they're bad people. They lie awake wondering how to regain control. What Dr. Peter Salerno, Dr. George Simon, and Dr. Gregory Lester all point to is that narcissism is not about a broken self. It's about a disordered sense of self-importance. And these people are not avoiding shame. They're operating from superiority. They don't see others as being equals. They see others as tools that exist to serve their comfort, admiration, or control. I'm going to quote Dr. George Simon, "It's often not shame, they're shameless." He said that in a video with me where we talked about 5 huge myths about narcissistic abuse that I really encourage you to watch. There's 2 parts. This is why you honestly cannot guilt a narcissist into empathy, right? You can't appeal to their better nature because that nature doesn't include conscience the way that yours does. Their moral compass points to whatever benefits them. It's not that they can't tell right from wrong. They can. It's that they don't care. They see their wants as inherently justified. And if they feel it, it's true. If they want it, it's right. So when people say they're just insecure or they're just acting out because they hate themselves, they're projecting. No, what you're seeing is anger that their entitlement isn't being met. That's not insecurity. That's ego injury. That's rage at being denied special treatment, the treatment that they deserve. This matters because it changes everything about how we interpret abuse. If you think that your abuser is ashamed or broken, you keep trying to nurture it back to health. You keep believing that love and therapy and patience will reach that hidden good man underneath. But if you understand that the driving force is entitlement, not pain, you're going to stop personalizing it. It was never about you. It was about control. Let's be clear. People with narcissistic personalities know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They can identify manipulation when they see it in others, right? They can tell the truth when it suits them. They just choose not to. They lie because lying works. They gaslight because confusion is power to them. They withdraw because silence gets results. These are deliberate strategies. They're not like emotional outbursts. That's why that old model, this whole idea of a fragile, insecure narcissist is not only wrong, it's dangerous because it gives these guys power. It gives them cover. It paints them as victims of their own pain instead of the perpetrator of yours. And I want to say this. It's not that narcissists never have trauma. It's that trauma didn't cause this, and trauma's not making them act this way. It is a choice. All of this lets them cry, "I'm just so broken," and they get sympathy instead of accountability. And you've seen this before, right? That tearful apology that turns into self-pity. The "I'm trying, what more do you want from me? Do you expect perfection?" It's all followed by the same damn behavior. That's not remorse. That's a performance. It's image defense. Covert narcissists especially use this, right? They know that pretending to hate themselves wins so much more compassion than admitting that they don't care. The shame myth also really harms survivors because it turns your empathy into your trap, right? It becomes your cage. It teaches you to rationalize abuse through this really compassionate lens, like he's wounded, he's scared, he's acting out. No, he's choosing control and domination, and he's choosing to exploit the very compassion that he knows will keep you there. So when you start understanding narcissism really through this lens of entitlement, it clicks. Everything that didn't make sense suddenly does. That's why they can say something cruel and sleep fine at night. Why they can sleep right beside you while you sob on the pillow next to them. Why they can cry over their own pain, but they'll watch you fall apart. Why they never seem to actually change. Why you realize it's all false promises because to them, nothing's wrong. The only problem for them is you're not complying. They don't lack self-esteem, they lack conscience. And the difference is huge. Low self-esteem says, "I feel worthless." Low conscience says, "You're worthless to me." And that's the core of this disorder. It's not shame. It's like a moral emptiness. And you see this play out everywhere, right? The man who cheats and blames loneliness. The one who screams and says, "You just make me so angry." The one who isolates you and then says, "I'm only trying to protect you." That's not a wounded boy crying for love. That is an adult man twisting logic to stay in charge. And it's not always loud. The covert narcissist does it quietly through self-pity and manipulation. He'll tell you everybody leaves me while abandoning you. He'll say, "I'm trying so hard. You're the one doing the work." And he hides behind victimhood because it's a more acceptable form of dominance. But once you see this entitlement that I'm talking about, the entire relationship makes sense. You're going to stop asking, why does he treat me this way? And start asking, why do I keep believing that he's capable of more? Because he's not, not in the way that you mean, right? He's capable of strategy, not introspection. He's capable of pretending, not repairing. This is why empathy and education go hand in hand. When you learn that abuse isn't a cry for help, but an assertion of power, your healing is going to shift. You stop trying to fix and you start focusing on freedom. You stop grieving the potential and you start accepting the cold, hard truth. That's what I teach. Not blame, not vengeance. Clarity. Clarity is honestly what ends all of this. So the next time someone says narcissists just hate themselves, remember this. If they hated themselves, they'd stop hurting others. They don't hate themselves. They hate losing control. They think they're superior. If you're ready to stop analyzing him and finally start rebuilding you, there's a few different ways that I can help. You can work with me privately to break trauma bonds or rebuild your sense of self, or you can join one of my group coaching programs where you'll find community and support and real healing. And make sure to subscribe because I'm telling you, the more you understand this, the harder it is for anyone to ever do this to you again.